Marvel has been in a weird place recently. I covered a lot of this in my Thunderbolts video, and I've since become a little more obsessed because of my ongoing love for Rivals, my comic book journey still following my boy Mark, but I don't have long left until I move on to like Frank or Matt or someone, and just enjoying the content they've been producing recently. Thunderbolts was one of the most unique things they've put out in a while, and it has genuinely great characters that I want to see more of. I've since watched Brave New World, which I hadn't at the time, and it's fine. I don't really get the hate for it because it's a competent movie, just a little out of place and with a concept that doesn't fit its protagonist. Like seriously, I think if it was just a movie about Mark Ruffalo Hulk, people would like it a lot more. Poor Sam, man. He needs a good movie. And anything that explores his life before meeting Steve, like we've barely even explored his own characterization. Like what the hell, man? He's Captain America. And here we are, the final project of Phase 5 of Marvel. I still haven't seen Quantumania, but it being the last project of both Michael Douglas and Evangeline Lilly is incredibly funny. Guardians 2 is peak. At the time I'm writing this, James Gunn hasn't released Superman yet, but I'm hoping that his streak continues and he really just doesn't know how to miss. I didn't see the Marvels, but I had alright reception, and Deadpool and Wolverine was flawed fun, and I don't mind that at all. Actually, considering the subject matter of this video, I should probably talk about the shows. CEO, you dumbass. Secret Invasion is actual dog shit. Loki Season 2 is on par with the first, except for Ki Hui Kwan, who unironically makes it even better. Easily the best Marvel show, and some of the best MCU media out there. I didn't watch What If or Echo. Sorry, I might check out Echo considering I'm watching Daredevil and Kingpin is in it right now. And I'm a bit more familiar with Echo from the Bendis run of Moon Knight. But that run kind of sucked, so I don't know. Agatha was surprisingly gay. Like, goddamn, these witches be slaying and gaying. What is wrong with me? Aubrey Plaza death made me feel a certain way, and it was actually really enjoyable. Maybe I was onto something when I talked about the Andor effect. I'm holding out on Daredevil Born Again until I finish Daredevil. I am on Season 2. But that leaves us with a pretty solid lineup. Secret Invasion and Loki basically cancel each other out, and then Agatha is the only remainder out of what I've seen. Clearly, I am a very good judge of quality of this entire phase. Anyway, that is just context as to where the MCU is right now, and where I am with keeping up with it. I'm trying okay, but I only just got back into things. I have other movies to watch too. But that's not what this is about. We're talking about the latest MCU show, Ironheart, announced 5 years ago, which I believe was before Riri was eventually introduced in Wakanda Forever. Although, with the rewrites that movie had to go through, it would make sense to have her added later. This show went through a pretty long production that was probably hit the most by COVID. But other than that, things have progressed pretty normally. Dominique Thorne and Anthony Ramos were set to play pretty much the two most important characters in the story, Ramos revealing that Ryan Coogler was part of production due to his production company partnering with Disney. Honestly, maybe that's why this finally got released. It is pretty hot off the heels of Sinners. Absolutely shocking the world by giving us a real fucking movie. Anyway, Ironheart follows Riri Williams, a young university student and aspiring inventor. Heavily inspired by Tony Stark and trying to carve her own path to make suits in a similar vein to Tony, but struggling when it comes to power, equipment, and especially funding. After failing to get her last project off the ground, she's eventually given the boot, hitting rock bottom and not being able to see where to go from there. She's then approached by someone who has heard of her expertise, or more likely saw her rip through the tarmac of Chicago when she ate shit, and offered a job. So she shows up, remains respectable, and aces her job interview, becoming a fresh hire with this group of cyber terrorists. Wow, this is just like Final Fantasy VII. Riri pulls these stunts for cash, but do her noble goals of being able to mass-produce suits to save people justify her present robbing of mostly innocent rich people? First off, I want to clarify something. The backlash surrounding the show is fucking stupid. Riri Williams is a criminal, as is Tony Stark, as is Scott Lang, as is Peter Quill, and all of the other Guardians. Riri does bad things because she is desperate and in over her head. One of her internal conflicts is realizing the rash decisions she's making, and finally listening to the people around her who are telling her how much danger she's in. Because she is kind of egotistical. That is a large part of her character because of her clear intellect. Who else was egotistical due to their genius? Tony Stark. Riri is meant to reflect Tony in several ways in her personality, just not having the funds and business to do what he did. And before you bring up that he built his first suit in a cave with a box of scraps, that suit kinda sucked. It couldn't handle the cold, but also Tony still had plenty of experience due to Stark Industries designing and producing weapons, using his moolah, and Riri builds suits just as good, just not exactly using cash from her own pocket in the beginning. I really like Riri's character. I'm not very familiar with Ironheart from the comics, but I am aware that she is not very well liked, to put it lightly. I've heard her called the most hated Marvel character, under Paul, obviously, because it's Paul, fuck that guy. But her MCU counterpart is very much portrayed as a flawed character. They make this very obvious, but still do a good job of making her likable enough, and explaining her motivations and reasons for the things she does and how she thinks. She has a mother that she feels she's leeching off of. Her stepdad and best friend were shot dead in front of her, and she's had to just move on without them. She wants her soup business to take off so she can prevent anything like that from ever happening again to anyone else. Much like Batman's experience with Joe Chill's cold-blooded murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne. She's feeling a lot of complicated emotions and falls in with the wrong crowd, in this case being a gang of criminals intent on attacking multiple business fronts to force themselves into becoming parts of their cash flow. The members of this group are Rampage, a tech whiz played by holy shit, Ichiban Kasuga? Clown, the classic pyrotechnic, Slug, the hacker, and an expert in the art of slaying, of course. The blood siblings, Roz and Jerry, they're kinda just the muscle, they don't matter that much. John, the second in command and recruiter of the group. He's the guy who gave Riri the pitch. But finally, we have Parker Robbins, the Hood leading the pack. Let me say right now, Anthony Ramos gives debatably the best performance of the show. And if you've seen it, you know who he's in contention with. Most of the gang don't really get a lot of emotional exploration. That might be something they're saving for the potential season 2, which is still up in the air. So it might just not be something they wish to focus on, which is fine. Clown and Slug do become more important later in the show, but for the most part they focus on John, Riri, and Parker. Parker has a silver tongue. He's confident, he knows what he wants, that fucking money! Now from what I know about Parker Robbins in the comics, this is also something he's very commonly seeking. However, he's usually a lot more evil. Part of me does dislike when classic mustache-twirling villains get made into misunderstood, tortured souls, but I can't blame Marvel for doing it in this case when they want to give Riri a reason to not immediately write off and distrust Parker because he's talking about how he's going to take over the world or whatever. They do very much take his name and title literally. I mean, Parker Robbins, also known as the Hood. Secretly, he's Goro Akechi. That explains why he's so hot. I mean, his plan does mostly involve stealing from the rich to give to the, presumably, poor? I don't know, man. Slug's makeup can't come that cheap. Maybe they just like being gay and doing crimes. I respect it. Immediately after his introduction, they establish that Parker has something going on. He's already wearing the hood. So people familiar with his character know what that means. But they don't quite show off what it or he can do yet. And I like that. It allows us to get used to this side of him. The suave team builder with conviction. Then they start to trickle in exactly what he's capable of as the first few episodes go on. Anthony Ramos nails the duality of Parker, perfectly encapsulating a manipulator who is ultimately looking out for himself, his own personal gain, and petty revenge. John is his longtime friend, and knows about the hood and what it does. So we have several scenes of the two of them together, talking about it and the group. I think this works really well, because otherwise we would have ended up with scenes of Parker talking to himself, and I imagine they would have been more awkward and way less natural of exposition and hinting were given. Alongside the main plot, Ruby is also balancing her home life with her mother, and upon finally finishing her suit design to aid and abet the group in their illegal activity, unwittingly creates an AI of her friend, who was shot dead in front of her, Natalie. This part of the show worried me a little in the first act, because it felt unnecessary. Giving Riri someone to bounce off of, have cute and friendly banter with, while always having someone to tend to does assist the show, but why an AI? Let's just say this gets answered later down the line. I didn't expect it, but Ironheart does include some commentary on AI, and how it's used in particular in the context of creations based on the dead. Because of this, I found Natalie to be a great addition. She felt like not only her own character, but gave us some of the more interesting scenes and interactions. The moment where she talks about the memories of the living Natalie, projecting them to remind Riri and her mum of her. And especially everything they do with her taking over Riri's suit, because that's how she can summon it. And speaking of the suits, they go insanely hard. As soon as I found out that they were built practically, I was on board with this show. I knew they'd cook, and it's even better than I expected. Riri makes several suits across the show, and it's just so satisfying to see actual plate armor with a retractable helmet, instead of the nanotech we've had through the later stages of the MCU. I hope they keep it up for a potential season 2, or if Riri returns. And the action with the suits is also exactly what I wanted from it. Now, Riri isn't going up against the same villains Tony did, so she's not getting the old Marvel movie same vs. same problem. And I think that's a pretty great thing. The fight she takes are interesting and dynamic enough to keep the action fresh, and the hits have some real impact. I'm very happy with the final product. There is also one recurring character I haven't mentioned yet, in Joe, who is an inventor a bit older than Riri, who she makes a connection with while shopping for soup pots. And I really like Joe. He's awkward, he lets people walk all over him, he's a bit of a sweetheart, and his story is something that I thought fit perfectly as a foil to Riri. He also has some of the funniest scenes in the show. And while not every joke lands, I can appreciate them enough. The episodes for Ironheart were released in batches of 3 with 1 week apart. I watched them as soon as they were available, and I have to say, the first 2 episodes are probably the weakest point of the show. We get a great introduction to Riri, then we need to introduce Natalie and Xavier, Natalie's father who Riri still talks to, and John and the gang and the hood, and throw some suspicion his way, and Joe, and a lot is going on, but in very slow ways that work well enough that are definitely not as good as what follows. Because episode 3 is where shit gets real. And that's when I started to understand that this was something special. Things pick up, we get excellent scenes of tension, good character moments, reveals that make sense to the story while not insulting the character's intelligence, and everything just gets better and better from here. There's 2 things I'd like to talk about when it comes to spoilers though, so skip to the timestamp on the screen if you'd like to avoid that. 3, 2, 1, live, laugh, love. Okay, my only real complaint about Ironheart so far is that I think the final confrontation with the Hood is a little short. I do like what they were doing, with his more animalistic and demonic side coming out, and especially how Riri outsmarts him, but it still feels like they dealt with the main villain a bit too quickly. Yes, he will return if there is a season 2, but I wanted a badass fight scene between his demon mouth form from the comics and a fully powered Ironheart. Either way, it's not a huge misstep. And finally, we have what is, in my opinion, the best part of Ironheart. Sacha Baron Cohen's performance as Mephisto. Mephisto has been a name circling the MCU for a while. People thought he'd be the one behind WandaVision, or Doctor Strange, or any project involving magic, really. But here he finally is, sitting in a cafe talking to both the Hood and Riri separately. Mephisto is portrayed excellently as a welcoming but sinister presence that allures you with riches then leaves you with rags. I very much understand that his character is a representative of the devil, and I like that a lot in a mastermind. It's very reminiscent of Jonathan Major's performance as Kang in Loki Season 1, which is high praise as he stole the show there. The little hints too, showing his face differently in reflections, the way he scoffs at the idea of negatives, but still plays on the ego of the characters in front of him. It's all wonderful manipulation that makes for a great villain to see. I don't think he'll end up as a Marvel big bad or anything, but if he's a consistent presence, I'll be very happy to see that. Spoilers over! Woo! Alright, I don't have much else to say about the content of Ironheart, despite being smitten by Reagan Elia. I just died on your arms tonight. But it's truly just refreshing to see... refreshing? It's truly just refreshing... I've said it again. But it's truly just refreshing to see a Marvel project surrounded in so many delays and worries and time pressures. Seeing the backlash and hatred pile on from the worst types of people, trying to squander the art being made. The art trying to say something important and give people a relatable story and characters. I hope Riri Williams can diverge from her comic book self and be loved by the people. I've seen plenty of posts about people comparing Riri's life and home in Chicago to their own, and that's just wonderful. It's such a perfect underdog story that against all odds, Heart succeeded and rose above the hatred. 8 out of 10.